Good evening, everyone. I am Garbo Hearn, Director of Pyramid Art Books and Custom Framing in Hearn Fine Art, and I am so happy to have all of you with us today in Facebook land and in Zoom world. We're glad you decided to join us this evening for a Faces conversation with Alice Aida Ayers and Anita Thomas. Alice Ayers and Anita are showing at the gallery in an exhibit called Faces, which is a compilation of mixed media textile and wire mesh sculpture. And it is an amazing exhibit. If you haven't seen it, you must come by. We're located in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1001 Wright Avenue. And of course, the exhibit is online at www.hearnfineart.com. So today we are glad to welcome Alice and Anita. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we're in for a great conversation tonight. I just want to tell you a bit about Alice and Anita. Alice hails from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but landed in Arkansas in the late 80s and stayed here for about 18 years, which we met and when we first opened the gallery. So Alice has been a part of Hearn Fine Art from the very beginning, and she has come back to us with a new body of work, and we're excited to have you back with us, Alice. Anita Thomas hails from Camden, New Jersey, and currently is active in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we're happy to have you here. Anita's been with Hearn Fine Art for probably about 15 years. She is our only wire mesh sculpture artist, so she is in a land of her own, and we're excited to have you with us, and thank both of you for being here tonight. Both artists will give a presentation, and then we'll have a short conversation just about where they are in the art world, and then from there, we will give the audience an opportunity to question the artist. So thank you so much. Alice, take it away.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm really, really honored and happy to be back with Hearn Fine Art. Yeah, we met in 1988 or 89, I believe. And yeah, Garbo really just helped me to get my career going. But then I ended up moving away to Africa for a few decades. And like she said, I'm back again. And what I learned during the time that I was away just really impacted the work that I do, and just my vision of how I feel my mission has changed since living in Africa and America. But the work that I'm doing now is really a representation of my experiences and my love, the people, and just the common threads that we all share worldwide. And that's one of the things that led me to textiles was because I always felt there was that kind of common thread. So it's interesting because when I sew, I feel like, I'm just kind of putting together and sharing and doing that whole cross-stitching, cross-cultural activity that kind of is very spiritual and very common among all of us humans. I guess Anna's going to put the images up that I'll talk about a little bit. And I wanted to talk a bit about my inspiration and my process. And I think the process is really important to talk about because a lot of what I do in my work is I try to teach these processes, and through sewing and quilting and these quilting circles just present a very cathartic and healing experience that we can all share. I've done the workshops with all ages and just genders and all walks of life, and everybody who does this sewing just really gets into it and loves it and is able to just share their own story through sewing their images or creating images out of mixed media and textile. The people in my life are what inspire me. This is my beautiful daughter, Dana. And so I just start with a photograph, and I just draw that photograph onto the surface and just start sewing the fabric, selecting fabric that I feel represents that particular person. And I love just adding different things and important little pieces of jewelry that have been passed on to me, or fibers, or even old paint, whatever inspires me. They're the pieces that I make are very organic. I have an image, but I don't necessarily have a plan. And even though this one I feel kind of looks like her, a lot of the pieces I do don't look anything like the people that they represent, but I just try to capture an energy. The next piece, this is a dear friend of mine in Zanzibar, Zawadi. And again, just, like the reason I chose those colors, or the colors chose me, was just because of that light that exudes from her. Now, a lot of the fabric that I use, the background of this fabric is fabric that I dyed. And then in the foreground, the fabric is all from Zanzibar, and it's kitenge and kanga. So the majority of the fabric I use is African fabric. Some of it is vintage fabric, some of it is newer. I started collecting it in 1993, so I have fabrics that really go back. And every time I go back to the continent, I bring back a whole giant suitcase or suitcases full of more fabrics. The next piece, this is my granddaughter, my other inspiration, Salima. And in this piece, I kind of try to capture that attitude of a 12-year-old, kind of when they give you that look and then roll their eyes at you. And the fabric here is fabric that I dyed, and some African fabric. And I like to use different textiles for the hair that I do. So sometimes I'll use felt, I'll use weave, I'll just, sew in kind of whatever I feel will work in that particular piece. And the next piece, this is my great great grandmother, and this image was taken when she was in slavery. And what I was working on here was kind of like the three phases of what I felt that she might have gone through, or those who came before her went through. The first image with the shells is kind of, that African, the slave ship, the coming over. The second image is her trying to reconcile being in this world and trying to kind of live in between worlds. And that third image is kind of how society expects one to behave and one to act, and that kind of so-called proper woman. So this is just this was something that I was dealing with personally as far as my ancestors were concerned. The stitching that I do is all hand stitch. Everything I do is hand stitch. I just refuse to use a sewing machine, even though I love sewing machines. But there's just something about stitching by hand that really just touches my soul. And those people who draw and paint, they understand that same feeling. When you hold that utensil in your hand and you create those lines, there's just something that is so connected and spiritual that runs through your body and your spirit. What else do I have on here? This is my self-portrait. Self-explanatory, but everybody with the selfies, again, inspired by my daughter who loves taking selfies. And I thought, let me take a selfie and kind of interpret myself, and just to play around and see what it would come out like. And that's what this image is. And a lot of the fabrics in here are fabrics that I dyed, fabrics that I've collected in Africa, but also in Mexico. I go to Mexico a lot, and that is also part of my heritage. So I also include fabrics from Mexico into a lot of the pieces. Next, oh, this is the process. And I had put this little video here, and I'm not sure we have time to actually show, but it's just, just the stitching and just, yeah. I always like to watch it because it just, I can't stop my hands from moving. Every time I see the video, I just want to sew some more. sitting right beside me is a piece that I'm sewing on right now. But again, this was the process. And I always start with the image in the foreground. So you see this background was red, but then it just, there's stitching all around it. And so you don't even see the red fabric anymore. Uh, yeah, but the foreground, because I never know what I'm going to do with the background. I start with what's in front, and then the background kind of comes later because then that image is placed in that environment. Next. These are a couple of pieces that are in the exhibition now at Hearn Fine Art. If you haven't been there to see them, I'd be very appreciative if you look at them. This is Daily Life and Corolla Kanasha. These are both friends of mine in Tanzania that I asked if I could just recreate the images of them. Every time I do an image of a person, I always ask for their permission in advance because I don't want them to think that I'm just kind of stealing an image or just doing anything without permission. The fabric on the Corolla Kanasha, this is the red, is actual Maasai fabric. If you know about the Maasai people in Tanzania, you know, they wear this beautiful red and black, these blankets and that and nothing else. And they're so very beautiful, and the way that they wear them is very, very elegant, very beautiful. Next. Two more pieces that you can see at Hearn Fine Art. Zakia, a beautiful local woman in Little Rock. And this other piece, Garbo actually named this piece Fierce because she saw it for the first time. And that was her immediate response, that it was fierce. So, but she actually never had a name prior to that. So I guess that was what was supposed to be. The fabric around the border is all, it's batiqued and hand dyed. And the fabric on the face is, it's mixed. There's a really just kind of a lot of different kind of fabrics there, both local fabrics and African fabrics. And then the stitching all around her is hand stitched. Same with the other piece. After we finish this, yeah, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. This right here is the Indian Ocean, Zanzibar. I lived in Zanzibar for just over 20 years and near the ocean. And so I went to the ocean almost every day for those 20 plus years. And it never disappointed in the gifts that it gave me, whether it was a beautiful meditation or some beautiful shells or, you know, a swim, whatever it was, you know, the gifts of the Indian Ocean, they just never ceased. So that's was the inspiration for this piece. I think that might be, oh, we have more. Okay. And then I try to put some humor in my work as well. So the piece Morning Coffee, this is a self-portrait of how I feel I look when I get up in the morning before coffee. And then the other piece is actually of my Aunt Mary, who, bless her heart, you know, just never could keep her in a bra. You know, the woman, she would just kind of leave work and then she'd fling off her bra. And I was, yeah. So this is all about Aunt Mary, but she hates to wear a bra. What else do we have? This is Joy and Sid. This piece here, it's a really special piece. Friends of mine from way back in the day in Little Rock. For Joy, I put actual weave on her hair because she always wore weave. And it just, you know, when I was doing this piece, I thought, what could I do for hair? And I just couldn't do anything else because, you know, that was just a part of. And then the little baby Sydney. Most of the fabric on here is hand dyed and batiqued. And that would be it. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed looking at those pieces. And if you have questions and comments, you know, I'll be glad to talk about them with you. I always love hearing artists' processes because we all share, that kind of same process. A lot of artists that I know share that kind of meditation before you start a piece, and getting centered and just finding a way to be grounded, and then kind of almost communing with the materials that you're going to use to create the piece, so that your energy goes into that material, but also that material becomes a part of you. It's such a personal experience. We all know that. But yeah, okay. And now I think I'm supposed to turn it over to my beautiful sister Anita.
Well, thank you, Alice. It was a joy just watching your presentation and listening to your final words. And I agree with you that about meditation and getting connected with your material. And that's very important to me too. Having my environment be at peace before I even jump into a piece, because I have to draw from some type of energy that allows me to flow and get into the piece. And I can't do that in the role of a mother or the role of the wife or role of the employee. I have to get out of that headspace. So you are totally right and in sync with that. So I'm Anita Thomas. I've been with Garb with Her Fine Art Gallery since I think we met in 2010 in New York. It was a New York event, and we connected from there, and I've been a part of them ever since. I love mesh. I got involved in mesh when I went to University of Delaware. A little bit of background. I actually started University of Delaware with trying to go into engineering and mechanical engineering, because I love metal. I love dimension. I love, something flat being seen into dimension. And I think that actually has a connection to my mesh. I love metal. I love stitching also. My mother got into, she was a seamstress. And I think that also has a connection to me being able to stitch the framing apparatus for you to hang my pieces on your wall. And that's a relaxing technique when I know that the form is complete. So I think we're going to jump into my presentation. So this series of artwork is actually has a different vibe than my other pieces. I have different series of like jazz series and nude series, and they all have a different vibe of, and I draw from, my inspiration is the world, or what is on the news, or what I am engaged in, or what experiences I'm having. And this collection right here is drawing from more of a somber, sad, from all the deaths of teenagers and just African Americans, just, the deaths. It was just weighing heavy on my head. So I started doing masks that were of a stone blue color. The blue represents sadness, and the stone is the death, and a transition from life to death. And this was more of my way of, I guess, memorializing those who are dead and have been forgotten, or their light has been snuffed out too early. Now this one particular, the Forbidden Tongue Blues, I have this female and the male. It's actually connected to, I was thinking about the deaths that are going on today, and then I started thinking about the slaves in the past, and how the masters would cut the tongue out from the slaves to keep them from being, boisterous, or to keep them from talking or being an activist. And they were, set as an example. And then I connected that with just people in power who do the same thing today, like police, or keep keep people quiet by either, stepping on their neck and getting away with it, or just different elements of power that keep people quiet. And that kind of irked me. And I started doing a mask about, Forbidden Tongue Blues, how I'm saddened by that. You can go next. And this again, I did one for the female, and I did one for the male. How I feel as though both can be suppressed in different ways, whether it's, you know, physically, or whether it's mentally being restricted from, you know, access to just things that'll pull them, being able to have access to pull them up through education, or any other ways to help them have a better life. And that was, like I said, my way of memorializing them. And and it was important for me to have the afro and the braids in there, because I find that some people assimilate themselves, and by, you know, trying to be a part of what's accepted. And I wanted to make sure that the mask represented a pure ethnic view of people. Next. Same here. Born Queen was more so about kids not being aware of their past and their connection to the ancestors, and just miseducation, and how they're not, you know, lack of self-esteem, and how they don't know the power that's within, and how it's important to me as a mother to make sure that my daughter sees that light within, so that no one can tell her or dampen that light or dampen that spirit. So Born Queen was about, again, just young African-American kids should know themselves and know their past, so that they can't be, so that their light will always shine regardless of what somebody says to them, that they remain resilient. So I did that for Born Queen and Born King. Same here, the young men, if they know their true selves and where they're from, their history, their past, I think their a journey, their direction in life would be more positive than the negative access to vices that they have now. Queen's Breath of Life, Queen's Breath of Life and King's Breath of Life are more so about a ancestral connection. I see these masks, these last two masks, as vessels, the way they have an emptiness to their eyes, whereas it's like it draws you in. Then I have a veil of Adinkra symbols that are handwritten on the face, that are about resilience and life and beauty. And my hope is whoever possesses these, that they gain a feeling of the ancestors connecting to them and looking at them and say, you know who you are. Take this resilient breath that I have and take it into your soul and do what you need to do to be successful and to live on, and to bypass all the negative media or negative energy that's around you. So this is about the passion and the light within, and the blood of the ancestors that run through your DNA today. Yep, and you can connect. So each of us are born with the light. Who is given access to that light can sway the outcome of one's life path. Be protective of the light within, for the light carries the hope, strength of many, which is the past, present, and future. I deeply believe that if you let an innocent life be exposed to negativity, then it already dampens their light. But if you instill in them that light is beautiful, then it's easier for them to protect themselves against that negativity. So that is my presentation.
That's so wonderful, Anita. That was really so beautiful to me, you know, and what you said. And I love each piece, but the one with those Andinka symbols, that just really strikes me. I use a lot of those symbols as well in my work. You know, they're just so powerful and they mean so much. And even when I'm teaching students, I always refer to those because of the meanings behind them and ask them always to find one that really appeals to them or resonates with them and just put that to use in your daily life and watch what happens, so that's a beautiful.
Thank you. I agree too, and that's why I started. Like even on my jazz pieces, when I started getting back into the other collections, the current drive started having the Adinkra symbols on them, just that extra level of power and beauty and enlightenment and just gives that extra oomph to not only the piece but some encouragement to anyone that owns it.
Mhm. So both of you ladies have embraced non-traditional media, textile and mesh wire, and there's so many spiritual aspects that you've shared. How have you been received by the art world?
Anita, you want to go first this time?
Um, well, it seems like just in my experience that the art world has embraced the direction that I go with because they can connect with the energy that I also talk about. As many people, whether it's artists or collectors or just people that appreciate art. Um, I just know that there's been clients that approach me and they would talk about the energy that they feel from my pieces, which makes it that much more special to me, that they feel the energy that I pass on to my pieces. So I think the art world is very receptive of what I produce. Alice?
Yeah, so far I think it's, the work has been received really positively. Textiles, quilting, and this type of work, I think it's really making a comeback. I really studied a lot about textiles, weaving and sewing. And it was like in the 80s, with Faith Ringgold and her quilts that she was doing that really kind of brought this type of work into the forefront. But my work, I'm never really sure what to call it because it's part of it is quilting, part textile, but it's also mixed media, it's applique, so I just, I get in there and I play and I have fun with it. But I think it has really been received really well. And it takes a long time to create one piece. So I don't have that huge body of work that I would like to have because, it's 2 and 3 months on one piece. So I'm working constantly, 12 hours a day with sewing and stuff. But I think that people see that and appreciate the time and love and effort and energy that goes into it. And I think, with your work as well as mine, I think the joy that we have in creating it really shines through. And that's for me the most important thing.
I agree. I mean, sometimes I wish I could be more productive, and I do spend a lot of time on each piece working out. I feel as though they talk to me. It's like I'll create a piece and I'll try to rush through it, and it won't allow it, so I have to come back to it, and then the face reveals itself, or then the gesture reveals itself, and then that's when I can't take a break from it. It's like, how you get into that vibe, you have to finish it because when you come back, it's not gonna be the same vibe. So I agree. I wish I was a little bit more productive, but I am very pleased with the turnout, the final, and that's important. Being happy with your final works.
Yeah.
So both of you have tackled Faces is the name of the exhibition. Both of you have tackled portraiture. Tell me what brought you to that world of faces and people?
For me, with these faces, I think I mentioned I started with women. Actually, I've only done one portrait of a man. And I think Tanya Paula Field is on here, and she actually got me into this exhibition. She invited me to this exhibition to do a prisoner portrait. And these for the show for Peace Week in Little Rock that happens every year. So I did that portrait of the male, in a quilt. But for me, just women's faces are just so beautiful, and they tell so many stories. And I mean, each line and just, from one woman to the other, whether you're just that beautiful, fancy woman with perfect makeup or that woman who is just natural and, just carefree. I mean, I just love capturing or attempting to capture just that energy that those faces exude, so that really just is kind of what drew me to trying to do faces.
Yeah, I started my first initial mesh piece that I did for a college project was faces, because it's like it was the more the not the easiest, but it was the most complicated part of the body that I could attack first. So I wanted to learn how to do that, and then I started going into gestures. But yeah, faces, they like you said, they tell a story and they say so much. And that's how I got into it.
Okay. So are you both approached by people to have their own faces done? How do you feel about commissions?
I've only done a few commissions, and actually the ones that I've done, I did them because I wanted to, and I just asked it. But like, yeah, I've not had a whole lot of commissions in the textile work. Years and years ago, when I was drawing and painting, 30 years ago, I did a lot of portraits out of paint and charcoal pastel. But in the textile, I haven't had so many requests.
I've been asked to do commissions, but not of, well, I have been asked to do portraits before, and I chose not to, because it's like it's restrictive for me. It restricts my energy. And with mesh, it sometimes has its own way. It has a pull and a force, and if I'm twisting it one way and to make a three-dimensional figure or three-dimensional form in the face, another portion of it wants to go another way. And if I'm forcing it, it's going to look forced. So, I tell people, if I'm going to do, I can do a likeness of your energy in a gesture, in an environment that you want. But as far as trying to do an exact match in metal, it's not me. It doesn't call to my energy. So, I prefer, and I tell them that that's the direction that it would go, a likeness in the environment that they're in.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take up all the time asking questions. I would like for each of you to ask each other a question, and in the audience, we really want you to, I'm sure you have some questions for these lovely artists, and we want to know what you're thinking. So Alice, ask Anita a question, and you ask, and then we'll get ready for our audience. Putting you on the spot here.
So I was just interested, actually, as you were talking about what weight, mesh, and wire you use to create the sculptures.
Yeah, I use 16 to an 18 gauge wire to do the foundation, to do the framing. If I do it too light, then it doesn't hold the form. If I do it too heavy, then the piece is too heavy on the wall, especially if I do huge pieces. But I like to work in the mesh that I work in, because it holds a form in comparison to other mesh that's out there. You would have to use a mallet in order to form it, or you would have to use there's filament mesh that it won't hold a form. You would basically have to stitch it into a form. So
And is this mesh, is it copper wire?
This is aluminum. This is aluminum. I strictly like to work with aluminum because it I can force and tug and play and de-stress it and re-stress it in comparison to other things. It just won't it won't work out as well as it does with this for me. And with stitching with you, oh my goodness, I find it so, your intricacy, I love intricacy, and you have like these beautiful curves and lines and designs. So do you plot out the lines prior to, you know, you have your subject matter of the female or the male, but do you go in and just like graphically design the lines that are around, or do you just go with the flow and let it?
Yeah,
That's even more fascinating.
It's all flow. I just go with the flow. I don't, you know, and then I'll just start sewing. And then if I see the line is going into a circle, then I'll just draw a circle, you know. But to plan it out ahead of time, I don't do anything like that. Yeah, I just kind of just start stitching and then see where it takes me.
I find that so fascinating because I do the same thing with my mesh. Like if I'll come in and throw like suggested eyes, suggested nose, suggested mouth, and suggested cheekbones. Then I'll come back and I'll mold it and it'll fold a certain way. Like you'll notice in, I think it was Born King, his nose is twitched up.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the way the mesh did that. And I was like, oh, I gotta leave it like that because I love capturing the essence of the mesh. I'm not trying to force it not to be what it wants to be. So I like to implement my vision on it, but I like it to do what it wants to be, what it wants to do, you know. So that's why you'll never find many of my mesh to be like just totally even. And I find that beautiful because it shows the organicness of the organic and the organic play between the mesh's force or tug and the artist who is working with it.
And that's why I like the hand stitching. You know, the machine stitching is so beautiful, so perfect, but you know, but it's so flawless. And you know, I can look at my work and people might say, oh, it's so even, so perfect. And I look at it and it's so not even and perfect, you know, but you know, I mean, and I'm not trying to be a machine, you know, so if it's not perfect, you know, I just kind of let it go and let it flow and see what comes out of it.
Agree.
So Alice, you have a friend in the room, Jean Whitesell, says she remembers the time she was with you in the Indian Ocean.
Oh my gosh. Jean and I were in Peace Corps together way back in the day. That was so amazing. And then when I moved to Zanzibar, she and two other of our Peace Corps buddies came and visited, and it was so beautiful. So she was, we got to hang out and go to the beach, and she saw what I fell in love with and ended up staying in Zanzibar for. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jean, for being here.
That it is so fun.
There you are.
I just remember our time there. It was great.
Yeah, it was so, really, really beautiful. I'll never forget that. Yeah. And then I'll never forget you on the back of the motorcycle. Yeah.
Oh, I'd even forgotten that. Darn it.
Now, Jean, you were, you were a little adventurer there, girl.
Well, I tried. Oh, goodness.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad I have this opportunity because we always miss each other when we're in the same area. And this is just a wonderful way. And now that I'm getting on in years, why Zoom is wonderful.
It really is. Yeah,
it is.
It really is. And I'm sorry I missed your last birthday party. Really wanted to go, but yeah.
Well, I understand. I understand completely.
Well, do we have anybody else in the audience that would love to ask any questions of our artists?
I don't have a question. I just want to, first of all, tell both of these artists how much I love you girls. you all are in my home. You're everywhere. Alice, you're in every room over here. Nita, you're all over here too. You're in my daughter's room. So your spirit is with me and with us. And I just love what you do. I love how you take your fabrics, whether there's mesh or cloth or whatever, and mold it into that being. And I love that connection as well. So kudos to you girls and your faces and what you all are doing out there in this art world. I'm loving it. I love watching. I took my sister to see, and she just thanked me for taking her to see you guys work down at Garbo's place. She just thanked me for taking her. So keep doing what you're doing. I love you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sis. That's so beautiful. Appreciate that. Always, always.
I was showing Alice's work to my kids, and they're like, "You know this person?" I'm like, "Yeah, she's pretty awesome." And I said, "Yeah, mine look as good as hers." And
Wow.
they had a thing with just doing fabric collage. And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do fabric collage." And, it took me forever to get one done. I'm like, "There's no way, man. I already learned from the master. I'm not going to go to somebody else's stuff."
How sweet. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate Jennifer. She's an amazing art educator in Arkansas. Where are you? What area?
Well, right now I'm in Home in Hot Springs, but I've been teaching in Stuttgart the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And as of right now, that's where I'm going to be next year.
All right. But she took one of my workshops in the fabric quilting, and then was supposed to take what she learned back into the classroom. And so I think you did, but you did it in paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did it in paper because a lot of my kids, they've been without knowing how to use scissors and everything. I'm like, I just need them to be able to do anything right now,
Yeah.
because I really haven't had an art teacher. We had COVID, and then our art teacher before me had a stroke and was out for quite a while. So, but they really liked it when I was showing them your stuff. They were like, "Wow, did she do that by hand?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, and I showed them the one I did in your class. I said, "This wouldn't, it's not stitch. It's just a collage. It's not a quilt yet." And they're like, "You gonna do that?" I said, "When I have some quiet time and some patience, it's driving me crazy. Now go sit down." But they really loved, like the brightness and, like just the feeling. Some of my kids were like the feeling of it, which is like, even if it wasn't like something they really recognize as, something that was new to them, they're like, "Wow." So we studied you and a few other people like Faith Ringgold, and they're like, "Wow, she's pretty good." I said, "Yeah, she's pretty good too."
Alice, could you share with our audience how you have incorporated your work with the prison system?
Yeah, I started going into the prisons in 2018, and yeah, this sounds so weird to say, but it was so hard to get into the prison system. I wanted to get in there and just kind of share with women and men, the textiles, the sewing, these circles, these sewing circles. There's so much connectivity. So I go in there, and just recently I was at Pulaski County jail, and unfortunately I couldn't take in, like needles and stuff like that. But we did do some collage, and we did the process, just through collage and with fabric, but just gluing fabric instead of sewing fabric. And then I also did a residency at a women's treatment center, and they did some really beautiful work with the sewing. And we had some really major discussions. And what's so interesting about it is that when you're in this circle and you're participating in this activity, it's almost like, it's almost like a Tai Chi experience. The energy is all pushed down, and you open up and you talk and you talk and you share things that are so personal that you hadn't told anyone before. And there's this wonderful bond that's formed, when you're connecting like this. So I mean, I love going into the prisons and working, with incarcerated people and, and people who are struggling with addiction and people with special needs. It's just, for me, it's such a beautiful experience, and I get more out of it than they do, I'm sure, because, just the love and the reciprocity is such a beautiful experience for me.
Well, thank you for that. Anita, you also have a ministry other than being a visual artist, you're also an author. Can you share about your children's books and how you brought your daughter into the family art of creating?
Yeah, I always with social media, I always have this tag that's called Anita's Thought of the Day. I'm always writing these thoughts that come to me immediately, and I make sure that I jot them down if I don't have a journal around. And sometimes they contribute to the books that I create in the future. What happened with the child books is when I became pregnant, one thing I wanted to do is cleanse my thoughts and create a book to kind of self-therapy for myself. And that stimulated my need to want to write about everything that I'm experiencing. So I have several different books. One was about, basically, I call it the 180-degree memoir, because I'm not dead yet. I'm not, just not 360. I'm not up there. So I said I wanted to do the journey of me to motherhood, to a wife. And that was one book. Then I got into the children's book after she was born. And I said, I got to track her life, because I wanted to feed back to her achievements. When she gets lost and says that I can't do anything, I want her to pull out her collection of books that say, hey, this is what you've accomplished from birth until now. And we wrote this together. So it's a journey. That's one leg of my journey, creating books with her. And she loves to write. So I have, we created a ghost story book. She collaborated with me on 3 stories. I edited, she created the stories. And then there's another children's book that I have out now called Hey, I'm a Brave Girl Now, which explores her growing into herself, her independence. And she helped me with the activities in the back of it to explore emotions and how to balance them and what to do if you're angry and stuff like that. So I'm enjoying this book writing journey with her, in addition to separate collections of writing poetry or writing ghost story books, usually for the summer, and just different ways of tapping into creativity. So yes, that's what I'm all over the place, but all of them feed, back to sculpting. I'll write something and all of a sudden I'll say, oh, that would be a good sculpture to trigger some. So all of the creative avenues do feed back to each other in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, we have a question from an emerging artist, Crystal Hooks. She says, how did you discover the mediums that you have chosen? So how did you find wire mesh sculpture? How did you find textiles, Alice?
Go ahead, Anita.
All right, so this is a story I've told over the years. It's kind of like the beginning of it all. I went to University of Delaware, and my mom was in the midst of dealing with cancer at the time. When she passed away, I ended up having to, I was taking sculpture classes, and I was using them as therapy. I was using them to get through college. And then we had this in the sculpture class, they introduced me to all types of material, whether it's wood and metal and what have you. The final project was to create a 5-foot piece that had to either stand on its own or hang on a wall. And we can either buy it, or we could use the junkyard that was connected to the sculpture studio. And the restriction to the project was, if you bought it, you could only spend $10, because it was a dynamic of classes that some had a lot of money and some people didn't. So I love that he put that restriction that you could only spend $10. Well, I needed my $10. So I went to the junkyard and I found a chicken wire. And that was my first exploration of getting into wire mesh. But the holes in chicken wire are so big. So I was creating humongous pieces with a small apartment, and I said, I can't do this. So that was my first jump to go to Home Depot and explore different mesh and their feel and how I could work with it. So that was the jump start. That was the kickstart of it all.
Alice?
Alice.
Yeah, for me, I always liked incorporating fabric and scraps and just, found objects into a work of art, whether it was a painting or whatever. And, I did a little bit of sculpture, but it was in '93 when I went to Mali and I got the opportunity to work with women making indigo fabric, dyeing indigo fabric and mud cloth. And man, after that, I was hooked and I just started buying fabric. And yeah, I have just boxes and boxes of fabric. And then I had a dear friend of mine that I met in Zanzibar, and she gifted me boxes of fabric that she had collected from the 1960s from West Africa. Yeah, that was, but she on the condition that I would use them, so, but it took me a while to actually pull them out. But, so yeah, I just kind of got started because of the love of fabric and just being able to manipulate it. And back in the early days, like 25 years ago, I used to use it, with the starch and manipulate it and make the pieces more relief. But, I don't know, you just kind of evolve and yeah, and I didn't do a lot of stitching, but I did a lot of fabric manipulation, and then the stitching kind of came into it. But I've been sewing since I was a little kid. Yeah, my grandmother taught me how to sew when I was about 10 or 12, and I just never stopped.
Okay, so we have time for one more question. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to say something or have a question? Okay.
I'd like to
Well-
say, love you, Crystal. Thank you for the question. Love you, Jennifer. Love you, Tanya, Jean, Janet.
Love you too, Alice.
Thank you.
Well, again, it has been my pleasure to have you both in my presence here via Zoom. Anita, you're in Philadelphia. Alice, you're in Tennessee. We're here in Arkansas, so amazing Zoom, and we have people on this call, on this Zoom from all over. So thank you all for answering the Zoom and registering. And you will get a copy of this to share with your friends. But I have to say, both of these artists are artists that you should have in your collection. Both are mid-career artists, and now is the time to bring them into your home. And I would love to help you with that. So please visit me at the gallery, 1001 Wright Avenue in Little Rock, or online, or just give me a call and I'll help you through this journey. We are celebrating 35 years of African-American art. We opened in June of 1988, actually on June 16th. So we will be celebrating the 23rd and 24th of June with artist Frank Frazier, who is based in Dallas, Texas. I think he was born in Brooklyn, but Frank was the very first artist that we had a solo exhibition for. And he's 80 years old this year. So we're celebrating his life, his creativity, and his generosity, and the fact that, it's been 35 years and we're still going strong together. And faces will be on exhibit throughout that opportunity as well. So if you come in to see Frank, you'll get to see Alice and Anita. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope that all of you have a good evening. And I'm going to let Anita and Alice have the last word and say goodnight.
Go ahead, Anita. Age before beauty. Go ahead, Anita.
You're too funny. I can't wait to do more work with you. That's all sister, you are a bright light that I have added to my path, and I'm not going to let you go. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, how
So,
sweet. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to be on this call. For all the beautiful lights that's in the chat box, thank you for asking questions and for just engaging in conversation and listening to our stories. And all those new artists that's out there, just keep burning that light and keep exploring. That's what it's about, to find your unique niche. You have to just explore and draw from everything. Don't try to put yourself in a box, because then you'll get stuck. Just
Yeah,
let your light, shine. Alice?
God, man, those are good words. Oh my gosh, those are great words. Wow, I can't top that. All I can say is that I am so grateful and I feel so blessed. And I want to really, really thank you, Garbo, for for pulling me back into the gallery again after all these years of being away. God, I'm really just honored and blessed. And all of you guys that are on this call, gosh, thank you so much. And for all your support over the years, and for attending workshops, and for just, being friends and sisters and twins. And I love you guys so much. Thank you so much. And I just, love, love, love. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll have to thank our technical support. Anna should be awake now. She's halfway around the world, but she's still here for me and here for her in fine art. So thank you so much, Anna. And again, it's been an hour, and I do respect everyone's time, and I appreciate you coming out this evening. And I hope to see you soon via email or in person. And thanks again. Good night.
Mhm. And y'all stay in touch.
Definitely. Love you, Garbo. Love hers. Love
Love
Anna.
you.
Have
Love
a
you
great
guys.
night.
Night.